So this presentation, it's a little more, or provides a little bit more background of the plenary that you got to see, if you were able to see it. And it's how we got to the 1 million corals project for Colombia. And 4 years ago, first, I'm talking on behalf of those 4 organizations that were 4 years ago part of the Reef for All project. And some of the people that you see there, they have their own organization now. Some are working with the Minister of Environment now. And it has been actually an opportunity, that experience and all the lessons learned and mistakes and good things that we did, an opportunity for definitely scaling up coral reef restoration and having a proper impact on the reefs in Colombia. First of all, what I do mean by the social ecological footprint, and footprint might be an English problem, is actually impact, because footprint has a CO2 context. But just for you to understand, is the complex interplay between individual, right, yourself, the relationships with the community, and all the social factors that are taken into account in coral reef restoration, in my case here. And footprint or impact is actually the performance in terms of the impacts of society and natural resources of whatever action that you're doing. So I just want you to have that in mind when I'm presenting here. As I already told you, I was 4 years ago here. See, the same shirt that I told you, right? I don't know if it's the same shirt, but definitely the same color. And that's what I presented, the socioecological restoration in the Seaflower Biosphere Reserve, San Andres, Providencia, Santa Catalina, right, in the Colombian Caribbean. It was the largest project back at the time, and I was very happy back then to be able to dance that same night with David Vong, you know, microfragmentation guru. So it was a really nice, and that's the beauty of these events, that you actually get to interact with people that you only see in the books or in documentaries and whatnot. So let me take you to Colombia. That's the archipelago over there and the 2 main islands. And the objective of the Reef for All project were threefold. First, to increase national coral gardening efforts to enhance the ecosystem services of fisheries, tourism, and coastal protection of the archipelago. And last but not least, pilot a participatory and alternative funding strategies to sustain coral reef restoration efforts in Colombia. Okay? It's a payment for ecosystem services that we managed to pilot there. The results of that project, okay, is that we ended up training 32 local fishers in large-scale coral reef restoration, people who were only fishing, but now they had an opportunity to receive another income doing coral reef restoration of the reefs that they were fishing. We grew 13,000 corals plus of 4 species, and we outplanted about just under 9,000 of those nursery-grown Acropora cervicornis and Acropora palmata. We piloted for the first time 2 microfragmentation projects there to include other species, and we also piloted 2 coral gardening sort of tourism-related project for as demonstration sites as well. What were the main outcomes of this exercise? First, that just 3,000 plus square meters of intervened reef area, that wasn't done before in Colombia. It was all experimental work, and we needed that to understand if things will work, but we needed to scale up to see some results. And actually, one of the results is that we saw an increase in live coral between 23% and 41% at the intervened sites. We developed a capacity building program for effective training in coral reef restoration that has actually evolved to have specialty courses, other organizations developing training, improving on that training program, and as I said, last but not least, a payment for ecosystem services that now communities receive some funding to conserve and protect coral reefs. Before, you may have heard it was only about the forest, right? You keep the trees in good condition, then you get an income. Here, for the very first time, you know, if you keep the reef healthy and you work to protect the reef, you're gonna receive some income. It's not a salary, it's an incentive, okay? The indirect outcomes is that there are new organizations, okay? People that used to work with me, right? They have their own organizations now. People who didn't have a chance to do restoration at all, now they're doing it and living from it. And you have tourist operators, the government itself, right? Becoming part of coral reef restoration. We develop capacity for responding to the natural disasters. In 2020, we have Hurricane Iota, and that hit Providencia Island, destroyed 98% of the island. We had the people and the capacity to respond right away to any effects that we found on the reef. We have also become a hotspot for different projects, organization, and a lot of research and development on coral reef restoration. So if you're planning to get trained to test, you know, new things, we have the capacity to do so in Colombia as a country. All that background information, right, is what led to the 1 Million Corals project for Colombia. So if you hear my plenary, apologies for seeing this again, but you know, it's a national project, right, that aims at growing 1 million corals to initiate the rehabilitation, restoration, and recovery of 200 hectares of reef across all Colombia, the Caribbean and the Pacific. And it involves all those organizations that are there. It's a huge, huge effort, and for the very first time, the government of Colombia has paid attention to coral reefs, right? From different reasons, right? But at least there is an interest from the national government, and it started from the bottom up to the government. The progress to date, we planned 12 coral reef areas. We have now 15 coral reef areas involved. We plan for 20 species to be grown. We have 34 species now on these nurseries growing. We plan for at least 5 genotypes of A species, you know, from the same reef, from different reefs to maintain genetic diversity, right? We have just under 1,000 putative genotypes across all Colombia. It didn't save my current. It's actually 500,000 stock that we have reached now, you know, since December to today. So we are halfway the goal, and it's actually, excuse my mistake there, it's actually 202 community members that have been trained in large-scale coral reef restoration, using, from the beginning, the Reef Resilience online course on coral reef restoration, okay? That's how they start. So they actually, it's not just the hands-on skill, it's the principles, the best practices, and the standards for coral reef restoration. And of course, we have 20 plus stakeholders, partners, and agencies engaged on this, and they are actually all receiving funding, equipment, can secure a team, you know, at least for the first year. The project started in September last year, because all the admin paperwork to get everyone signed, as in the organizations, it got a delay. We started operations across all organizations pretty much from January this year. It was going to end this first phase in March. Now it's being extended to November because they realized that coral gardening is not as easy as you think. We are still looking for money for the second phase, which is the outplanting, right, phase, to get all that million corals and plus to the reef. So if you have any ideas, please talk to us. and how to secure that outplanting. What we learn on this exercise. First of all, you need to build capacity and stewardship. You have to engage the locals. They need to understand the why, the how, and the what you're doing this. Otherwise, you're not gonna get buy-in. And you have to be realistic under expectations. You heard me before, I made mistakes. You know, we're gonna do this much. You're gonna live from restoring the reef, from planting corals, and when it comes to budgeting, when it comes to getting the funding, you actually have enough money for 3-5 months only if you are a single organization. You have to involve the people, right? And the government as well. And that will help you to plan for administrative and financial breaks. It happens. There is not a perfect bullet. Even the government sometimes has some breaks, and there will be shortfalls on funding. The last one, we need the projects, definitely, but what we need to look for are programs, long-term actions. The project have a start and an end. We need to plan for ecological restoration programs and understand that we need the research, but to get an effective response on the reef, we need to start thinking about production as well. And of course, have fun doing this. I lost friends, almost got into a depression doing this, okay? You learn so much about, doing these things, but you definitely need to be consistent and have fun. Not a lot of people get to dive and travel and meet that amazing people that are doing this work. So with that, I'm gonna leave you. Thank you very much. And there are gonna be another 2 talks from Colombia. Andrea right here is gonna have in the afternoon or in the morning, and Mariana Geneco as well is presenting a follow-up of this exercise. Thank you very much.